Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into the absolute paradox of the placebo. We're going to look at how a 13th century insult for fake mourning somehow evolved into a deeply measurable neurochemical healing process. You know, we so often think of the placebo effect as just being all in our heads, right? But as we're about to uncover, it is actually a very real, very physical, biological response. Let's get into it.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll kick things off with the origins of the placebo, then move right into the clinical trial revolution. After that, we'll explore the brain's internal pharmacy, uncover its dark side, the nocebo, and finally, wrap up with the future of fake pills.
Okay, part 1. The origins of placebo.
It is honestly fascinating how a Latin phrase, literally meaning "I shall please the Lord," morphed so wildly over the centuries. It actually started back in the 13th century during Catholic evening services for the dead, which were known as the Vespers. But by the 14th century, it became a medieval insult. Families would actually pay mourners to attend these services just to get a free meal, and writers like Geoffrey Chaucer started mocking these sycophants as singing placebos. Fast forward to 1772, and it finally enters medicine. A physician named William Cullen prescribed plain mint water to an incurable patient. Now, he didn't expect to cure the guy. He literally just wanted to please and comfort him in his final days.
Now, this historical shift perfectly set the stage for using placebos to expose medical frauds. Take 1784, for example. Franz Anton Mesmer claimed he could cure illnesses by manipulating a universal fluid through, and get this, animal magnetism. Well, King Louis XVI of France wasn't entirely convinced, so he appointed Benjamin Franklin to investigate. Franklin's Royal Commission used blindfolds to systematically deceive patients. They'd magnetize them without their knowledge or pretend to magnetize them when they weren't doing anything at all. The result? Total debunking. They proved that the dramatic medical crises Mesmer was triggering were caused completely by the patient's own imaginations.
And right on the heels of that, we get another brilliant early experiment. In 1799, a doctor named John Haygarth wanted to test these incredibly expensive patented metallic tractors that supposedly cured inflammation. So what did he do? He carved and painted plain wooden sticks to perfectly mimic the expensive metal ones. Running a single-blind trial, he proved that simply touching a patient with fake wood provided the exact same pain relief as the pricey metal rods. A real game changer.
Which brings us to part 2, the clinical trial revolution.
So those early debunkings made it crystal clear we needed a rigorous way to isolate real medicine from the pure, natural healing power of the mind. Let's look at the 3 major methodological leaps that built the modern clinical trial. It kicked off in 1863 when Austin Flint treated rheumatism with highly diluted quassia wood, which is basically just flavored water, to prove the disease mostly resolved naturally, without toxic, orthodox treatments. Then, jump to World War II in 1944. The British Medical Research Council introduced double blinding. They tested a mold extract for the common cold using alternation allocation, meaning neither the patients nor the nurses knew who actually got the real drug. Finally, in 1946, statistical randomization was introduced. Put all that together, and you've got the absolute gold standard for testing medicine.
But, here is where the science almost derailed entirely. For decades, Henry Beecher's highly influential 1955 study, The Powerful Placebo, was just accepted as fact. He claimed placebos literally cured an average of 35% of patients across a whole variety of ailments. Sounds amazing, right? Well, a 1997 mathematical critique by Keenel and Keen proved his math was, frankly, terrible. He embarrassingly ignored natural disease progression. Think about it. If someone had a cold, took a placebo, and got better 6 days later, Beecher called it a placebo effect. He totally ignored the fact that colds naturally just go away in a week anyway.
All right, let's move into part 3, the brain's internal pharmacy.
So for a brief moment there, scientists actually thought the placebo effect might just be bad math. But then came 1978. John Levine's landmark study changed absolutely everything, proving that a genuine biological placebo response absolutely exists. Here's what Levine did. He administered a drug called naloxone, which actively blocks opioid receptors in the brain. When he gave naloxone to patients who were experiencing placebo pain relief, their pain immediately came rushing back. The implication here is just staggering. It meant the brain was physically manufacturing and releasing its own internal painkillers, endogenous opioids, simply because the patient expected to feel better. It wasn't just cognitive reporting bias, it was actual chemistry.
Now, what is so fascinating here is visualizing exactly how this all happens inside our heads. Try to think of the brain's pain matrix as a gated pathway. When you anticipate a cure, a region called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, or DLPFC, generates that cognitive expectation. It then fires a signal down to the midbrain, specifically the PAG, which literally acts like a physical gatekeeper to slam the door shut on ascending pain signals coming up from your spinal cord. And while that's happening, your nucleus accumbens is processing this whole expectation as a reward and releasing dopamine.
Think about your everyday life for a second. We naturally assume a higher price tag means higher quality, right? Well, it turns out our brains do the exact same thing chemically. In one study, when Parkinson's patients were told a fake pill was a cheap new medication, they saw about a 13% improvement in their motor scores. But when they were told the exact same fake pill was expensive, their brains released a massive surge of therapeutic dopamine, resulting in a 28% improvement. No real medicine in either pill. The brain literally used financial cost as a biological proxy for medical quality. Wild, right? Now we need to talk about part 4, the dark side, also known as the nocebo.
So we have to pivot for a minute to the sinister biological twin of the placebo, the nocebo effect. Just as positive expectations can heal you, negative expectations can physically harm you. Let's contrast two emotional states to see how this works. Trait fear versus trait anxiety. When you experience immediate, imminent fear, your biology paradoxically reduces your pain to help you survive a threat. That actually enhances the placebo response. But if you have generalized, anticipatory anxiety, like you're just worrying about future pain, your brain flips a different switch. It activates the pro-nociceptive CCK system and your body's stress axis. And that actively amplifies the pain signals arriving at your brain.
This specific trial shows exactly how much context matters when we're talking about nocebo harm. Harvard researcher Ted Kapchuk ran a trial where half the patients got a fake pain pill and the other half got fake acupuncture. I want to stress, both treatments were totally 100% sham, yet the patients developed terrible side effects that perfectly match what they expected from that specific intervention. The folks given fake pills, they reported fatigue and sluggishness, but the ones given fake acupuncture, they reported localized swelling, redness, and nightmare-level pain in their joints. The context completely shaped their physical suffering.
Okay, final section, part 5, the future of fake pills.
So the big question now is, how can doctors actually utilize this biology without lying to people? Because for centuries, doctors just assumed they had to deceive patients for a placebo to work. But take a look at this recent Harvard Medical School data. Researchers gave patients bottles explicitly labeled placebo pills. They told them up front, these are completely inert. And the results? Absolutely astounding. Irritable bowel syndrome patients saw a 60% improvement. Chronic low back pain patients saw a 28% reduction in pain. Cancer-related fatigue dropped by 29%. The mind-blowing takeaway here is that placebos still work phenomenally well, even with total transparency.
Now, how is that even possible? Well, we can explain this paradox using what's called the predictive processing model. In chronic conditions, the brain kind of gets stuck in a feedback loop, right? It's constantly predicting and amplifying pain or fatigue. But the highly structured physical ritual of medical care, talking to a compassionate doctor, getting a prescription, the daily routine of swallowing a pill, all of that creates new, powerful top-down signals. The ritual itself essentially hacks the brain's loop and overrides that internal symptom amplification, even if your conscious mind knows the pill is fake.
And to top it all off, we are now discovering that our DNA actually hardwires our placebo susceptibility. Researchers have found specific genetic variants that determine exactly how fast we clear neurotransmitters. For example, if you happen to have a specific variant of the COMT gene that clears dopamine slowly, you are highly susceptible to placebo healing in conditions like IBS. Other genes, like FAH and MAOA, regulate exactly how robustly your own internal pharmacy will respond to just the suggestion of a cure. It's literally in our genes.
I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought. We've seen how the placebo effect evolved from a medieval insult into a deeply measurable neurochemical pathway driven by expectation, dopamine, and even our genetics. We've seen that even when we know a pill is completely fake, the structured ritual of being cared for still physically changes our brains. So if the simple ritual of care holds this much biological power, perhaps compassion, empathy, and genuine human connection are the most potent and fundamental drugs we have. Think about that the next time you interact with the healthcare system. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the science behind the everyday.